So today we're going to swap out the rear coil on my Devinci Chainsaw. Please subscribe, and if you use the link in the description below for Jensen USA, it helps support the channel. Let's get into it. First off, we have to take off the rear shock. One thing to note is getting it back on can be a bit of a pain. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this toe strap to hold the suspension in place, so when it's apart, it's easier to put back together. Get it nice and snug because that rear end is pretty heavy and it'll fall down a little bit when I take out the bolts. First, we're just going to crack all these bolts loose. And as I remove this last one, there are going to be a couple washers that will likely fall. So you just want to make sure you either catch them or see where they go. First things first, you got to order the right spring. Sprindex has a great chart on the website so you can get exactly what you need. I did know I needed a significantly heavier duty spring. This one had a 400 and I went with a 510 to 570. This one's adjustable, which is really cool. I'll show you that later. But first thing you got to do is get this spring off. In order to do that, you do have to take out the mounting hardware, which I don't have all the exact correct tools for, but there's a couple really good ways to do this. First, you can use the edge of your bench. You want to make sure you're pushing on this end, not on that end, so you don't bend the shaft, but it slides down, no problem. Now to get it out the rest of the way, if you have a Park tool three-way, it works really well to go like this, but I don't. So I have this pedal tool that fits perfectly in there, and the same idea. Pops right out. Next, we loosen the spring basically all the way so that we can get this clip out the bottom and pull it off. This one is coming in contact with the rebound knob, so you gotta kind of move it slightly, or you can spin it all the way off like this. Not a bad idea. Give it a quick little wipe down while we're in here. Then, if you need any more instructions, a little QR code to get those from Sprindex. You'll notice these are specific to the brand shock. I did already install the Rockshox one here, so it's pushed up in there and doesn't come off very easy. So once you get it tight, just give it one solid turn, and that should be good. You do have some adjustability. You can go up to 3 turns in. If you go too tight though, you will get what's called spring binding. So you don't want to go overly tight. And then you'll notice at the bottom here, this is where you're able to adjust the coil, there's in-betweens as well as full notches. We're going to set it up just slightly stiffer than the most basic level. And now, the reinstall on the bike. We'll start with that mounting hardware. You can see there's little pieces. This is actually the bushing there. That is fully replaceable, but as long as it goes in firm, it shouldn't need replaced right away. There you go. Let's get it reinstalled on the bike. All right, so we're going to put a little grease on these washers. This just helps hold them in place as I put it back together. And on the shaft of the bolt. Next, we want to make sure we Loctite these threads. It had blue Loctite on it, so we're going to keep that going. And let's get it back on. We're going to start with the lower mount. That one goes in easy enough. Just get this snug, but not tight. Then with that grease, I'm going to pop these washers back in place. They're held slightly because of the grease. And like I mentioned before, putting that toe strap on makes putting it back together quite a bit easier. It's still not completely aligned, but I need less hands than if it was having to lift up that a whole lot. All right, gonna get them a little bit more snug each, and we'll get that torque wrench out and torque them. You should be able to find the torque settings on the website, or oftentimes they are actually written right there on the bolt. So this one says to torque it to 14 Newton meters.
How do we know that it did 14 Newton meters? It clicks?
Yep. And this bottom one is a lot harder to read, but it also says 14 Newton meters. And there you go. Now have a stiffer spring. And it's ready to ride. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Friday.
So why are there so many exposed
So this is a slightly shorter spring made to work with more shocks on the market. As long as it's tightened down though, it'll be just fine. It's still a heavier duty spring, you can see, but it is a little bit shorter. That also will save a bit of weight. So I went with a stiffer spring because the sag was too much, which meant that I was bottoming out quite often. Now that I have the Nomad, I have some great plans for this bike, so stay tuned to find out.